Hey YouTube, one of the questions that I've received probably more than just about any other one is how do I start hormones? I've made up the decision, this is what I want to do, how do I actually get started? And so to answer that, I made a video before talking about how I did my hormones, but I don't think I necessarily talked about really sort of the other options that are available. And so there are three options. There is do-it-yourself, which is literally what it sounds like. There is informed consent model using a doctor. And then there is the kind of full standards of care, or WPATH, World Psychological Association, Transgender, whatever. There's that way. And that is the most sort of gatekeepery, where you have to jump through the hoops or whatever, even if they're just administrative. And so to go in that order from the least supervision to the most, there is do-it-yourself, where you're going online to a website like In-House Pharmacy, where you can just order the hormones yourself. So whether that is T-blockers, estrogen, progesterone, or even I think you can get testosterone. That might be tricky because I'm not sure how the laws around it work, because it's kind of like a steroid, I think, but maybe an FTM person could answer that. But you just order that stuff online. You decide kind of what your doses, what you want them to be, based off of the blood work that you should definitely have done regularly. And to do that, you can go to a LabCorp or a Quest Diagnostics. Basically anywhere you get a drug test for work, for the most part. They can take some samples, send them off for analysis, and then give you a report for something like 60 to 70 bucks, I think, for a full panel. And so if you don't have insurance, this is really probably the only kind of way to do this pretty affordably, because otherwise you need to see a doctor for a prescription. And in-house pharmacies' prices tend to be a little bit more than what your insurance, I think, would charge you. Yeah. There are also prescription savings plans out there that all major pharmacies offer, where they'll give you generics for basically cheaper than what I pay for my copay. And that is another option that's available to you if you can get prescriptions but you don't have health insurance. The second method is informed consent, and so that essentially says that the doctor is telling you, like, you understand the risks, the consequences, sort of what's going to happen from this treatment, and you're okay with that, and then we're going to work together to do this. And there are some doctors who are very okay with this. My doctor at Vanderbilt was. The doctor I have here in Dallas was not. So I actually had to go back and get a letter from a therapist, even though I've been on hormones for 2 years and could bring them in my current prescriptions to show that I just needed to maintain. But that is neither here nor there. Informed consent does exist. There are doctors who will do it. And then you essentially do the same thing, except now the doctor is monitoring your blood work and your prescriptions instead of you doing it yourself. And generally the doctors, I think, who do informed consent are a little bit more progressive about letting you kind of guide your dosages and where you want to be, so long as you're in a safe range for your various levels. And there's actually a list of informed consent doctors available on TVOX. That's T-BOX. I'll put that down here in the bottom of the video. But they have a list of doctors, so you might be able to find one in your area who you can see. And then the final method is the gatekeeper standards of care official practice. And basically it's a cover your ass for all healthcare providers involved, where you start with seeing a therapist for 3 months so that they can get to know you, determine whether or not you have gender identity disorder or dysphoria, or whatever they're calling it in the DSM these days. And then they write you a referral letter to a doctor, and so then you have to go find a doctor, give them the referral letter, and do these previous steps of ramping up your doses, checking your levels, and things like that. And so regardless really of how you do your doses, you should do some ramp up just to see. But it's really just who's administering it and how much are you paying for it, because that will depend on sort of these different models where you don't have to see a therapist. So that might save you some money and some time, absolutely. Whatever. But that is essentially the 3 ways you can go and get hormones in the United States. It's probably pretty similar overseas, except that in-house pharmacy and some of those in-house pharmacy services may or may not be able to ship to you depending on what country you're in. I'm not sure what other services are out there. I just know that that's one, but so maybe some people who have used them can list them for other people to look at. But that is how you start hormones.